Hi everyone, welcome to Anthony's Career Advice. My name is Anthony and you guessed it, today I'm going to try to provide you with some career advice. The topic of today's video is ageism. Now, ageism is a very interesting and tricky topic to discuss because it can sometimes hit a little too close to home, I find. And the focus of today will be to talk to maybe people who are closer to that upper echelon of experience, right? Those who have maybe been in the workforce for 15, 20, 25, possibly even 30 years, right? So this video may be catered a little bit more to you and also to people leaders, especially you who are in the position to make decisions, because sometimes we don't necessarily make the best decisions depending on our level of experience or what we're looking for. So hopefully this provides a little bit of guidance as well when contemplating or considering who to add to your team. But first we've got to start at the beginning, and there are assumptions that are associated with ageism, right, or older workers. So we look at it as the older you are, the more set in your ways you are. And in some cases this is true in some aspects of our lives, but not necessarily always the case in everybody. I mean, I've worked with and met people who are in their 20s who are already set in their ways, right? So that's not necessarily tied to an age, that's a mindset. But it is lumped into ageism, so it has to be addressed. The other things are there seems to be an unwillingness to compromise that kind of ties into being set in your ways, right? My way or the highway, or this is how it's always been, this is how it should always be. That's important to address. The other things too are sometimes having a challenge with accepting leadership or direction from someone who is younger. That is also an assumption. The other things too are that people believe that someone who may be older may look at a younger generation and kind of judge them based on the generation, right? Making general comments or themes around someone's age range as opposed to taking the individual into consideration. That is also an assumption. Resistance to change, right? I mentioned that already. That's important, but also the other thing is an unwillingness or a lack of tech knowledge or feeling a little bit tech savvy. These are things that tend to be on the checklist of assumptions regarding ageism. So really what I want to focus on is how to combat that in the easiest way possible, especially around the times when we're doing an interview. Because it's pretty much where it rears its ugliest head. It's when they don't know you, right? So how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, we have to acknowledge that if we've been working for 30, 25, 20, 15 years or so, then we have the battle scars to show it. We have age in our face. We are older. It's just a fact of life. We have to accept it and embrace it. I'm living proof of it too. We all are, right? You don't get younger, right? There isn't a pill for that yet. And then when it does happen, who knows how good or bad it'll be. But anyways, I digress. So what does that mean? That means we got to focus on our experiences, right? That's the be-all, end-all. That's the hallmark of any great interview. That's the hallmark of any great discussion. I'm trying to persuade someone to select you over other candidates. So it starts with the quality of your content. Make sure the quality of your content and what you're talking about is relevant to the job that they're asking someone to fill, the role that needs to be filled. Make sure that it's roughly within the last 10 years or so. There's nothing wrong with going further back, but you want to limit how far back you go. Right? That doesn't have as much to do with you as ageism as it more does with how fast things are changing, right? So you really want to focus in on, well, what have I done over the last 10 years or 5 years or so that has really moved the needle, has made an impact, because that's truly the best, should be the best example of what I bring to the table, because it's more current. So that's important. Right? And if you have a wealth of knowledge and experience and years under your belt, that's fine too. There's nothing wrong with going a little bit further back, but you just got to make sure you're maintaining a healthy balance of like 80 to 90% within the last 10 years. And if you're going beyond that, it's got to really wow someone. It's got to be a big story, right? Maybe even something that was newsworthy, right? So these are the things to consider, right? The other thing too is you want to lean into being able to say, now, if you're staying in the industry, you're a subject matter expert, so your years of experience add value. But if you're leaving an industry, but you're translating a skill, like let's say sales, which is more universal and it doesn't really matter what the product is. It doesn't hurt to have product knowledge, but a salesperson is a salesperson is a salesperson. They understand the concept of relationships, rapport building, and that 80% of the business comes from 20% of the people that you work with. So you want to be able to reiterate how you're leaning on that skill, if it's the most transferable, to equate to future successes with this organization, especially if it's something different, especially if it's outside of a subject matter that you're familiar with, right? That's a good thing to do because you can still demonstrate success. and show that you're dynamic, right? Do a little bit of research, find out a little bit more about a product, a service, or the industry that you're jumping into. No different than if you were trying to do anything else. Same rules apply. The other thing too is our goal when doing an interview, we want to try to make it as comfortable as possible, as reasonably comfortable as possible, and maybe even make it feel like it's a conversation. But don't neglect the basics. Don't assume that in the past I would just walk in, shake a hand, have a conversation, and 10 minutes later I got the job. That could be the case the second or third round of interviewing. But for the most part, you want to make sure that you're maintaining that formality as much as reasonably possible, even if the people sitting across from you are a little too laxed. You're still being judged. So making sure that you have that structure in your answers is important. When it comes to skill, I'm going to go back to that, is the one thing I think that we neglect is our interpersonal communication skills. I think that if you've been in the workforce for any number of years, you've been exposed to enough situations, challenging ones, to be able to understand how to approach those situations, especially when they cater to maybe conflict at work or just communicating in general, right? So being able to discuss how you handle pressure, how poised you are, how because you're experienced, you pretty much feel like you've seen or have done or been exposed to any number of different things, which allows you to kind of be a little bit of a steady hand. In doing that, that makes you far more desirable, right? The other thing too is to understand that you bring more to the table than just the work. You could also be considered a mentor, right, to a junior staff. I mean, that's an added value. That's something to articulate, right? It's not to say that you're replacing leadership or doing the job of the leader or stepping on anybody's toes. You're ultimately saying, here's the added value. In essence, you're saying, if you don't have a me on your team, please consider me, or adding one, or someone like me, because that could be a difference maker towards you being as successful as you are now, or even more so. So in essence, you're saying I provide peace of mind, right? So that's okay too. The other thing too is going back to the point of technology, or the assumption of technology is show how tech savvy you are. Now that doesn't mean that you blog, you vlog, you YouTube, you tweet, you Insta, you whatever it is, your Facebook, even if whatever, your Meta, that's where we are now in the world. Just kind of say every time a system has been implemented where I've worked, I've made it a point to become a subject matter expert, proficient enough at it so that I can ultimately almost teach it because it's required. You show that and you do that, that provides peace of mind. That negates the fact that you're a little bit older, right? The other thing too is there's an assumption of saying, well, how long will I be able to have you? I mean, if I'm going to assume based on your appearance that you're closer to retirement, what's the reasonable amount of time that I have you? Truth be told, most people don't stay regardless of generations. Typically more so the younger generations, but it may shift. Everything is cyclical. It's been 2 to 3 years in any one role, maybe about 5 years within an organization. So if ever there's a fear around how long you're going to be employed there, or if there's a concern around age, always focus on saying my goal as the working professional here when thinking about the logistics of this role and maybe something in the future is always tied to what are the problems the organization is trying to solve and how can I add value. If you frame answers in that way or articulate things in this manner, chances are you'll be able to combat ageism without actually talking about it, but you're addressing it, right? Now, this doesn't guarantee that they won't judge you or that they won't budge. But really, what you're doing is you're walking away saying, I am this old, I have this many years of experience, and I did everything in my power to show that I can do everything that's asked of me and possibly and then some. And it's up to them. If they choose me, great. Then we can have a really good working relationship. If not, then I'll find someplace else. And that can be a tough pill to swallow if you're actively looking for work, being unemployed. So it's not easy. I'm not saying that you can brush it off right away, but what I am saying is if you look at what you can control, and these are the things that you can control. If you do that, or even just some of that, I think that you'll be able to walk out of any interview, in person or virtual, shoulders back a little bit more, chin up a little bit more, a little bit prouder, and knowing full well that if they don't select you, they're missing out. Guys, I hope this video was helpful. Like always, if you like what you've seen and heard here today, please share and subscribe, and do enjoy the rest of your day. New videos will be loaded shortly. Bye for now.